Well, the ambassadors are but a part of what lifts our spirits here today, and a very central part of this entire ceremony is our chance to welcome the class of 2017 to our alumni. To do that, we've chosen somebody pretty spectacular herself, and I mentioned her earlier, Dr. Liz Tarlow. Liz is not only a Fletcher dual degree, MALD and PhD, but her BA from Smith College, just up the road, specialized in Russian language, Russian studies, and the Soviet Union, applicable, of course, during her time at university. Throughout her extraordinary career, she has drawn again and again on that expertise in Russia and the Russian language. She's been a superb advisor to me as we've rebuilt the program of Russian studies here at the Fletcher School. And the heart of her work was over at Harvard, where she led the Davis Center for Russian and Eurasian Studies for years. Since retiring from that, she has focused more of her energy, her activities on philanthropy. She's been the chairman of the board of the Museum of Fine Arts here in Boston, which some of you may know. The school of that museum is now part of Tufts University. That's in large measure due to Liz's extraordinary work on behalf of the university and the museum. She has also served on the advisory board of the Davis Center, the American Repertoire Theater, and the School of Museum of the Fine Arts here at Tufts University. So she is, in every sense, someone I've known for 30 plus years, but have gotten to know her well over the last 4 years as dean, because she's a leading voice on our board of advisors, principally to help advise, recommend, and guide our efforts to improve all aspects of gender here at the Fletcher School. Our gender field owes a lot to her work. Our doubling of the percentage of faculty members, female faculty members, over the last 4 years in tenure and tenure track. Her, indeed. She has been a consistent leader on the board, leading to her selection to be the first woman to be the chairman of the Board of Advisors of the Fletcher School. I think she is the perfect person to join us and welcome all of these. My friend, my classmate, Liz Tarlow.
Thank you, Jim, for that beautifully warm and welcoming introduction. Let me begin by extending a fantastically warm congratulations to you, the class of 2017. Yeah. Yeah. My assignment, as I understand it from Dean Sheehan, is to reflect on my time here at Fletcher, to welcome you into the ranks of the Fletcher Alumni Group, and to be brief. And actually, that last remit is the easiest. I had many, many wonderful professors here at Fletcher, but one of my very favorites was John Perry. Some of you remember him. He recently retired. As you may recall, he, in addition to regaling all of us, his students, with gems of Japanese diplomatic history, he really modeled the glories of pith in writing, and especially in public speaking, both of which he relentlessly demanded of his students. So I began at Fletcher in 1982 with my dear friend, Jim. I wish I had some great stories about him. I wish I had some dirt to dig up on him, but he was such a goody. He was so good. So here it was, a robust 35 years ago. Yes, before most of you were even born. I already had a master's degree in Soviet studies, and I had been working for an arms control journal at the Kennedy School, one of their research centers, which today you know is the Belfer Center. My boss then, a research associate, and a recent PhD here at Tufts, from Fletcher, was as the managing director of the journal. It was so inspiring. He spoke so much about Fletcher that eventually he really inspired me to follow his path and pursue a PhD here and go into the field of academia. At the same time, also there, was another colleague who has become an enormously close friend, Bobby Cates Garnick, today one of your esteemed faculty members. She at the time was a pre-doctoral fellow, getting her PhD here at Fletcher, and she sized up my situation, which was at the time that in addition to a job, I had one child and another one on the horizon, and she looked at me and she said, "Do anything at Fletcher, just don't do a PhD." She knew what she was talking about. It took me well over a decade to get my PhD. But I hasten to add, I really enjoyed every minute of that experience, and it really set me on the most rewarding path. So the story of why it took me so long to finish my PhD is actually what I want to focus on, just briefly, because ironically, it speaks to one of Fletcher's greatest strengths. So shortly after finishing my MALD, I embarked on a dissertation to analyze then-contemporary Soviet policy toward Japan. Gorbachev had just become General Secretary of the Soviet Union. It was still a closed society, with policy-making essentially unknowable, except through the painstaking exercise of tracking high-level meetings and official documents, an incredibly laborious and boring exercise. I now had 2 children, a full-time job, and only summers to work on my dissertation. So several summers into Gorbachev's reign, the advent of glasnost, perestroika, and new political thinking had opened up opportunities for Western researchers to visit Moscow, to interview officials and even scholars, albeit government-approved. So supported by a fellowship from Professor Perry's North Pacific program, I was invited to spend time at one of Moscow's top research institutes. And using that as a base, I interviewed virtually anyone I was able to convince to talk to me about Soviet policy toward Japan. I'm sure hearing about that, such interviews sound very mundane and routine to you as a research methodology, but I can assure you that at that time, it was pretty novel and incredibly exciting to actually have access to the likes of Alexander Yakovlev, the same Politburo member who was credited with framing and implementing perestroika, and other high-level experts, despite the still constrained nature of their comments. So back home, one summer day, buried under a stack of interview notes, ready to forge ahead, I suddenly heard on the radio the totally shocking news of an attempted coup against Gorbachev and of Moscow being in complete chaos. Yeltsin was soon to mount the infamous tank, the Soviet Union and communism would collapse, and as they say, the rest is history. Not to underplay the enormous domestic and international implications of that, but that the rest was history was actually a problem for me. My dissertation itself was now history, and I was supposed to be getting a degree in international politics. Was my topic even relevant? At that point, my 2 dissertation advisors, one a diplomatic historian, the other a political scientist, guided me through my panic and helped me reframe my topic. I turned to an important question, at least I thought it was, that previously would not have been possible to answer. So with the Gorbachev period and indeed 70 years of Soviet communism now at an end, why, among all of Gorbachev's stunning foreign policy accomplishments, including normalizing relations with the United States, Western Europe, China, India, not to mention relations with the socialist countries of Africa, why was the normalization of relations with Japan the single unfinished business? And it was an important question, given that Moscow had so much to gain from improved relations, especially in the crucial economic sphere. So ultimately, the answer was wrapped up in the pivotal role of domestic politics as it played out during the final throes of the Soviet regime. To analyze this properly, I needed access to some internal documents that previously would not have been possible to get. And this now entailed another trip to Moscow, this time to retrieve private documents long hidden in a colleague's sister's Dostoevsky-like apartment. It was terrifying. It was a long and harrowing story, but the gist of it is ultimately I was able to seize victory from the jaws of dissertation defeat. I tell you this personal story to highlight what I believe Fletcher does better than perhaps any other school. Fletcher teaches students to be nimble, to be flexible, to look at problems from a multiple of perspectives. With its interdisciplinary approach and its specific curriculum and culture, you have all received truly one of the best educations in international affairs in the world. Your world-class professors have provoked you to think deeply and differently and to understand the context of the issues at hand. Your fellow students, representing more than 50 countries, have no doubt challenged your biases and opened your eyes to different points of view. You are poised to take these lessons of flexibility and openness and use them to contribute responsibly to the whole new upside-down world order. Graduation and class day speakers always talk and warn that the world is in a precarious state, that the challenges to peace, security, human rights, and well-being is more urgent than ever before. But actually, I do believe the case can be made that today the world really is in an even more fractured, intolerant, and dangerous state than ever before. I suspect you'll be hearing more about this from your keynote speaker today, Richard Engel. So whether your future involves work in law, diplomacy, business, energy, human rights, academia, whether it's in the public, private, or nonprofit sphere, you've had the academic training and you've learned the skills to be exactly the type of citizens and leaders needed to tackle the most pressing and intransigent problems we face today. So now that I've inspired you to greatness, I welcome you into the ranks of the Fletcher Alumni. Your network officially expands at this moment from those of your immediate peers to the entire Fletcher Mafia. You'll find alums all over the world, and they'll offer you friendship and support and no doubt open doors to you. Now, in exchange for these gifts of a great education, friendship, and all this support, it's also my responsibility as a Fletcher alum to remind you that you have a responsibility never to forget Fletcher. This school depends mightily on the generosity of all of us who can give back in whatever ways we can to ensure Fletcher's unique excellence and that it thrives and continues to train outstanding citizens and leaders like you all. I can now hear Professor Perry's bell ringing, so I'm going to end here, congratulate you one more time, and wish you great, great success and accomplishment and contribution on whatever path you choose to follow. Thank you.